The number was stamped on the inside of her wrist. Not tattooed, not branded. Stamped, the way you stamp a freight container. Black ink over silver skin, 6 digits and a dash, and the reclamation office seal pressed beside it like a thumbprint on a receipt. I saw it when she moved her arm to cover her face. Crouching in the back corner of my storage berth, behind a rack of compressed gas canisters, trying to make herself the size of nothing. I'd come down to check the pressure seals. Platform Velarif had been shaking for 2 hours. The kind of low shudder that comes up through your boots and doesn't stop. And 3 berths down, old Tessex gas line had already ruptured. I wasn't looking for a child, I found one anyway. She was Kelvhari, ashen silver skin, membrane ears folded flat against her skull, amber eyes that caught the work light and held it the way a cat's eyes do. Small, maybe waist high, if I'd stood her up. She had one possession, a folded piece of cloth, the color of sea smoke, pressed to her chest with both hands. I knew what the number meant. Everyone on the platform knew. Platform 7 had gone down 4 days prior. A structural failure, they said, though the salvage teams who came back weren't saying much about what they'd seen. 1,500 Kelvhari resettlers. The reclamation office had moved in within 6 hours, logging survivors as displaced resettlement assets pending reintegration, which was their language for, "We own you, we'll place you where we choose. And if you're a child without documented guardianship, you go into the transit pool and nobody asks where you end up." I crouched down. I'm a small man, and I knew how I looked to her. Big human, strange smelling. I stayed low and kept my hands open. "I'm not with them," I said. She didn't understand standard, but she watched my hands. I went back upstairs. I told no one. I brought down half my ration pack and a canteen of filtered water and set them inside the berth door and waited in the corridor until I heard her move toward them. Then I sealed the berth from the outside with my own lock code, the one that didn't register on the platform manifest, and I went upstairs, and I thought about what I was going to do. I was 61 years old. I had worked freight docks for 38 years on 6 different platforms across 4 systems. I knew manifest law the way some men know scripture. Not because I loved it, but because ignorance of it had cost me early on, and I'd sworn I wouldn't be ignorant again. Reclamation Office operated under Colonial Resettlement Statute 7 subsection 14. I knew that statute. I had filed against it twice in my career, once successfully. The officers came to my corridor on the 2nd day. 2 of them in the flat gray coats, their scanning equipment and their clipboards. They were polite. They were always polite. They told me they were conducting a routine asset census, that a number of juvenile resettlees from Platform 7 had been logged as unlocated, and that anyone found harboring an unregistered resettlement asset was subject to platform suspension and civil penalties. I told them I'd been in my berth and hadn't seen anyone. They scanned my corridor. They did not have a warrant to scan individual locked berths. Not yet. They left. On the 3rd day, my ration card was flagged. Platform systems. Teen audit, they said. I ate what I had stored and I brought the rest to her. She had learned my name by then, or something close to it. She called me O.N. She'd stopped folding her ears flat when I came in. She still held the cloth, but sometimes she set it down to eat. And once I came in and she had spread it across her knees. It was a child's drawing, painted in pigments that had half faded, of a tall Kelvhari woman, and a small Kelvhari girl standing in front of something I couldn't identify. I didn't ask. I sat on the floor against the canisters and ate my half of the ration, and we shared the canteen, and that was sufficient. On the 5th day, a senior officer knocked on my berth door. Not the gray coats, senior rank, white trim, the insignia of colonial administration on his collar. He was younger than I expected. He had the soft hands of someone who had never sealed a gas line or carried a manifest crate in his life. He told me they had a movement log discrepancy. Thermal imaging placed a second heat signature in my registered berth space on multiple occasions. He told me the penalty for asset concealment was suspension of platform residency and seizure of domicile. He told me I had until the next morning to surrender any unregistered resettlement asset in my possession, and that the child, he called her the asset, would be processed humanely and placed appropriately. I looked at his soft hands. I looked at the 6-digit number I'd watched him glance at, on his clipboard, the number that matched the stamp on her wrist. I told him I'd need until morning. He left satisfied. They always left satisfied when you said you'd need time. It meant to them that you were afraid calculating the cost and coming to the sensible conclusion. They were usually right. I went downstairs. I opened the storage berth. She was awake, sitting against the far wall with the cloth painting on her knees. She looked at me and her ears came up. Not folded, not flat. Up, attentive, trusting, which was the thing that sat in my chest like a coal. I sat down next to her. I opened my manifest archive on my handheld, and I went to Colonial Resettlement Statute 7, subsection 14, paragraph 9, which was the one they never read, because it was a carryover from the original Frontier Compact of 2271, and no one had bothered to excise it. It had been written to protect indentured freight workers from reassignment without consent, back when freight workers and resettlement assets were sometimes logged under the same colonial charter. The language was old. The language was precise. Any living being assigned a cargo manifest classification by a colonial authority and subsequently housed within the registered domicile space of a recognized platform resident for a period exceeding 72 hours shall, by operation of the compact, be reclassified as a domicile dependent of that resident, exempt from resettlement asset recovery procedures, and subject only to voluntary transfer or formal judicial guardianship proceeding. She had been in my berth for 5 days. Filed the reclassification at 0200. Platform administrative systems were automated. The filings went through without a human reviewer. By CO 400, manifest number had been superseded in the colonial registry. By a dependent classification tied to my resident ID, the stamp on her wrist was still there. The legal meaning of it had changed. The senior officer came back at 0700 with 2 gray coats and a transport authorization. I opened my berth door and I stood in it, and I handed him the filing confirmation on a printed sheet, because I wanted him to hold it in his soft hands. He read it. He read it again. His face did the thing faces do when the architecture of certainty collapses. This statute is 140 years old, he said. Yes, I said. It was written for freight workers. The language doesn't specify freight workers, I said. It specifies living beings assigned a cargo manifest classification. You assigned her a cargo manifest classification. He was quiet for a long time. Behind me, I heard the small sound of her breathing. She had crept to the doorway, and I could feel her standing at my back without turning around. This will be challenged, he said. Challenge it in a judicial proceeding, I said. That's what the statute requires. You know how long colonial judicial proceedings take. She'll be 18 before the first hearing. He looked at me. He looked at the paper. He looked past me, at her. Whatever he saw in my face when he looked back, I don't know what it was. I know what I felt. It was the simple arithmetic of a man who has worked 38 years, learning the rules of a system, so that, when the moment came, he would know exactly which rule to use. He left. They didn't come back. She stayed. Her name, I learned over the following weeks as her standard improved, and my handful of Kelvhari words grew, was Sevi. She was 8 years old, or the Kelvhari equivalent of 8. Her mother had been on Platform 7. She did not talk about Platform 7, and I did not ask her to. I still have the cloth painting. It lives on the wall above the workbench now, next to the manifests, next to the lamp. The tall woman and the small girl, painted in pigments that keep fading, a little more each year. Sevi painted a new one last winter. 2 figures, a small silver girl and a large, square-shaped human with no neck to speak of, which I suppose is an accurate enough portrait. She hung it up herself, next to the first one, and stepped back and looked at them both for a while without saying anything. That seemed right to me. Some things don't need words. They just need to be on the wall where you can see them.